Don't get out of bed.
Pete's wearing a seersucker suit.
Yes, because
in honor of Labor Day.
I Googled it this morning. You know, it is the last day you can wear white or seersucker. So I'm told by the fashionistas. So I'm playing by the rules for once. Can't wear it tomorrow. Why not wear it today?
No.
Right? And Griff's not wearing a belt because we're going to eat a lot of barbecue.
Griff's going to eat more. There's a meat challenge, a burger challenge. I'm going to eat a lot more so that the pants stay up because someone forgot their belt. But hey, it's Labor Day. But you know what, though? The week is going to be a big one. And as soon as this show's over, I'm heading back to Washington because the countdown to confirmation is on. The battle over President Trump's Supreme Court pick taking center stage this week.
That's right. Judge Brett Kavanaugh facing off with the Senate Judiciary Committee tomorrow as Democrats fight to keep him off the bench.
Jillian Turner is tracking it all down for us in Washington. Jillian.
Good Labor Day morning to you guys.
Good morning to you.
Lawmakers always hit Supreme Court nominees, as you guys know, with tough questions at their confirmation hearings, but Judge Kavanaugh's kickoff is expected to be especially grueling. Some Democrats acutely aware this could be their last chance to block him from the high court. The numbers look good for Kavanaugh as of today. Republicans still have a 51-seat majority, and Capitol Hill insiders predict at least a couple of vulnerable red state Dems will cross over and throw their support behind him. Senator Graham telling Fox News yesterday to expect major grandstanding from lawmakers eyeing 2020 presidential runs.
No drama in this hearing. The only drama is those running for president. How will they handle this hearing on the Democratic side? You know, we're going to get this good man confirmed.
Judge Kavanaugh spent the past week in prep sessions for the hearings, known in Washington as murder boards, where close advisors grilled him on the toughest topics that are likely to surface. Still a point of contention in Washington today, the 100,000 pages of Kavanaugh's records the Trump administration's decided to withhold, a decision they announced Friday.
These documents, if we're lucky, we will see 6% of all of the documents that have been produced or could be produced to reflect on Kavanaugh's true position on issues.
Senate Republicans point out more than 2.5 times as many records have already been produced for Kavanaugh than for any other nominee in history. It's nearly 500,000 pages in total so far. But Democrats insisting it isn't the numbers that matter. They claim the American people have a right to transparency. Kavanaugh's complete record, no matter how voluminous it may be. Guys?
Thank you, Jillian.
Appreciate it, Jillian.
Something tells me that no matter how many documents they get, they're not going to change their mind on Brett Kavanaugh because Brett Kavanaugh is a strict constructionist, and they don't like that.
It's the Washington, D.C. dance. He's a very qualified guy. He'll do very well in these hearings. He'll probably get some Democratic votes, and he'll be on the Supreme Court.
That's right. So, you know, Jillian was saying that he's been preparing for doing the murder boards. Listen, Brett Kavanaugh has been preparing for this moment his entire life. I've known Brett Kavanaugh for more than 20 years. This is what he wants to do, become the Supreme Court justice. He is squeaky clean, and he's going to do great in the confirmation. But here's the big picture, and that is you're looking at a swing vote going to conservatives. It hasn't happened in decades, and Democrats simply cannot stomach the thought that they're going to have a conservative court again.
You're going to be inside some of those protests tomorrow, so don't miss it on the Fox News channel. But yesterday on the Fox News channel, if you were watching Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace had the president of the AFL-CIO, the largest union in America, Richard Trumka, as their president. He had some comments. You know, Labor Day's coming up. Chris asked him some questions. How is the American worker doing under President Trump? This is what the AFL-CIO president said.
Unfortunately, to date, the things that he's done to hurt workers outpace what he's done to help workers.
I didn't know Fox News Sunday became a comedy routine. No, the longer interviews, actually, we should play a longer bite. Maybe we will in the future hours. Chris did a really nice job pressing him and asking him questions about this. The evidence doesn't match the rhetoric. Workers are well better off under this president, yet a union boss still siding with the Democrats.
Right. Well, his complaints, one of them, he had a list of them. One of them was gas prices are up. Well, guess what? That's what happens when you have a booming economy. And by the way, imagine how much higher they would be if Donald Trump hadn't pursued energy independence for Americans. He also complained about NAFTA. This is the part that really blew my mind. Trump took the side of Canada in the renegotiation process. I mean, if you're a union member and you're looking at this, you're going, what? He actually took the side of Canada. Everybody knows that in this negotiation, Canada doesn't want to renegotiate. Canada likes the way the deal is right now.
So back up, though. Even before you get there, you got to realize Chris Wallace, who I think is as good of a questioner on Sunday mornings as anybody, he lays it out. He says, you're the head of the labor unions. Now, let's look at what President Trump's administration has done. We're talking with the economy growing at 4.2% in Q2. Unemployment fell to 3.9% in July. Consumer confidence rose in August to highest level since October of 2000.
Unbelievable.
GDP may be headed for 3% for the year or higher, depending on who you talk to. And youth unemployment hits a 52-year low. So, Mr. Trumpka, I ask you, why is this administration good for labor? And you know what his answer was? They haven't passed an infrastructure bill.
I saw that. It was.
And it was like
Richard Trumka is more of a political animal than he is an advocate for the American worker. Absolutely. The labor union movement has been bought and paid for by the Democratic Party and vice versa.
Right.
He was lunging at any reason to believe that a Democratic win in the midterms would be good for workers, counter to the evidence of what this president has done to put the working man, the blue-collar man, at the forefront of an agenda, and the results are evident. So I think if you're a union member and you're watching this guy, does he represent me or does he represent the swamp and the political interests of others?
Listen, you're thinking that exactly. And by the way, interesting too that he is with the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party, whenever within their party they have conflicting interests. You have American worker interests, you have environmental interests.
Correct.
They always take the side of the environmentalist over the American worker. Here you have Donald Trump who went ahead and green-lighted, for example, the pipeline.
Yep.
And
Dakota Access Pipeline.
No credit from Trumka on this. Not a thing.
Nope.
It really is astounding.
And Pete, you mentioned the blue-collar workers. Well, an online poll shows that 86% of those blue-collar workers are satisfied with their jobs. 85% say their lives are heading in the right direction. 91% proud of the work they do. 80% say their jobs provide a good living.
So this was an online survey done by Harris in the middle of July. About 1,049 blue-collar workers were asked about this. And, these are proud folks that do really important jobs that make our lives better, that are the engine of the American economy, and I think have been forgotten for quite some time. Mike Rowe, you love him. He has a lot to say about these types of jobs and why they should be more prominent in our economy. Well, he says college graduates these days, shockingly, they have unrealistic expectations of the workforce. Listen to Mike Rowe.
You sit down with people today who have matriculated from a four-year institution, there's an expectation, and again, I don't really want to blame this group or that group, but the expectation is real, and the expectation is this. I want a job in my chosen field. I want that job to pay not just fairly, but well. And most interestingly, I would like that job to be in my zip code, like right now. If you walk it back, you can identify the disconnect that's happening in our educational system and the expectations that are leading to just a colossal confusion with regard to what is really happening out there. And somewhere at the root of it is the fiction of a safe space and this happy little hope that somehow or another we can mitigate our stress away by talking it through.
So this is the part of the show where we ask for viewer comments. Email us at friends@foxnews.com. But I want Gino DeFabio, who is a forklift worker in Ohio. I first had him. We had him on this show. We're doing a package. He had never voted for a Republican in his life. He comes from a labor family. Gino, if you're watching, tell us this Labor Day, what do you think about the labor market, along with all of our other viewers, because he is a pointing case in what this administration has done for laborers who had been led by the labor union. Many felt in the wrong direction, but never had the candidate to deliver what they wanted. Now you're seeing it for the first time, and these numbers show that.
That's right. Do you love your job? Do you feel like this administration is fighting for you? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. maybe attach a photo to it. It's probably going to
Yeah.
help your chance of getting on the show. Since TV is a visual medium, if you have a
Absolutely.
photo of your job and why you love it, or what this
Also,
administration's
tell us
done,
what
we'd
you're
love to
doing
hear.
this Labor Day, because,
Yes.
this is a time to relax. Our American workers are working, but today they're off. So let us know what you're doing for Labor Day.
If you put "I love Jillian" in the subject line, we'll probably read that one first.
You'll get a retweet.
It can help. It can help. Julie, good
Good
morning.
morning. Happy Labor Day to you at home as well. Hope you're enjoying your day. Let's start with this Fox News alert. At least 10 people are shot after gunfire erupts overnight at an apartment complex in San Bernardino, California. 3 of them in extremely critical condition. Police do not have a suspect yet. You remember 14 people were killed in a terror attack in San Bernardino back in 2015. A desperate search is underway for 4 people who went missing after a horrific boat crash on the Colorado River. They have not been seen since 2 boats collided in the water bordering California and Arizona on Saturday. 16 people were on board and at least 2 are in critical condition. None of the boaters were wearing life vests. The cause of the crash is still unknown. To extreme weather now. Labor Day in the Sunshine State could be washed out with heavy rain in the southeast today. A potential tropical storm brewing at this hour, set to pound South Florida with downpours and gusty winds. It's expected to strengthen in the Gulf of Mexico and could cancel or delay flights. Governor Rick Scott warning the time to prepare is now, and Adam Plotz is in and is tracking that. Family and friends say their final goodbyes to John McCain, the late senator laid to rest during a private ceremony at the U.S. Naval Academy in Maryland. His wife, Cindy McCain, laying her head on his casket as she cries, clutching flowers. Beautiful images here. McCain buried alongside his longtime friend and Naval Academy classmate Admiral Chuck Larson. His final send-off concludes nearly a week of tributes and services in Arizona and Washington, D.C. And I say, some of the beautiful images you see because you see people truly celebrating this man's life. It was just incredible to watch each day the services.
That's right. That sign is correct. Godspeed,
Yep.
Senator John McCain. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senate confirmation hearings for President Trump's Supreme Court pick begin tomorrow. Our next guest has the big questions he'll face in front of the Senate.
And President Obama hitting the campaign trail for Democrats this week. But not all of them want him around. He's probably going to do it all the way through the midterms. Well, President Trump's second Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, heads to Capitol Hill tomorrow for his first confirmation hearing. And Democrats, well, they're already gearing up for battle. Take this, for example. Senator Kamala Harris tweeting this. Remember that this president is an unindicted co-conspiracy in a felony criminal investigation and should not have the ability to appoint someone to a lifetime position on the Supreme Court. Kavanaugh's hearing should be delayed until the investigation is resolved. Well, that's settled. She's running for president. So what are the top questions they're going to ask? Carrie Severino, Chief Counsel and Policy Director of the Judicial Crisis Network. Carrie, thank you very much for being here this morning. So we're going to see a very split dais. You're going to have Republicans on one side in support of this nominee, Democrats really going after him. What are the potential tough questions Brett Kavanaugh is going to face?
Well, one thing we're definitely going to see is people talking about how would you decide this case, whether it's Roe versus Wade or guns or campaign finance. They want to see a judge who's going to deliver the results they want. And you know what? I'm sorry, that's not what judges are. It's not a fairy godmother. He's someone who is applying the law as it's written. And so he's not going to be able to answer those kind of questions. They know very well judges cannot answer questions about cases that are likely to come before them. Justice Ginsburg set the standard on that when she refused to answer like 60-some questions. So that's not something we're actually going to hear an answer to, but we're going to hear it asked over and over.
So we're going to hear
this.
Contenders. Hey, due to my profession, and I'm going to play these cases straight. I appreciate your question, but I don't want to prejudge it. We'll hear that.
Yep, and the 2020 contenders are going to want to get more and more tape of him saying, sorry, I can't answer that. They're looking to film campaign videos. They're not really actually trying to get information.
Sure, of course. That happens all the time. This is all on TV. Carrie, we're hearing a lot about documents and the so-called lack of release of documents. Brett Kavanaugh's got a long and distinguished record on the bench. He worked in the Bush White House. Any concerns that they're not being transparent at this point?
Yeah, that's something he's definitely going to get asked about a lot. First of all, it's not his call what to release. It is the White House's call, the Bush White House in this case, because that's where he worked. And what's frustrating to me here is this is the same process that's been used for all these previous nominees. It's the same type of request that was given for Justice Kagan's documents, for example, when she worked in the White House counsel's office, Justice Gorsuch's documents. And what we've actually seen is we have multiple times more documents than we have for any previous nominee. It's more than the documents released for the last 5 nominees combined. So this is actually one of the more transparent processes. Plus, the senators have access to them, not just a stack of papers, which is what they used to get. They have digital files they can search. The Democrats aren't arguing in good faith here. They don't really want the documents. They want to have something they can insinuate. So you give them 500,000 documents, it's not enough. He's guilty until proven innocent in their minds. And that's not really how our system works.
That's a good point. But there are a few senators that are usually in the middle who aren't using that guilty until presumed innocent. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, Republican senators that could go either way. Do you anticipate they will ultimately vote for Kavanaugh?
I do. I think when you look at his record, the most relevant record is his 300-plus opinions on the bench. That's 10,000 some pages there. And when you look at that, he's someone who's fair, who's balanced, who's even-handed. He applies the law and calls them as he sees them. That's what all of those senators are looking for.
Well, it will be some political theater. Ultimately, he'll probably end up on the bench. Kerry, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Great to talk to you.
You got it. All right. Well, he was President Obama's Secretary of State. But John Kerry just gave President Trump a major thumbs up and revealed what really happened to that red line in Syria. Interesting. Plus, the American flag left on the cutting room floor of a new Hollywood movie about the moon landing. What would Neil Armstrong think?
Happy Labor Day. Some quick headlines for you. Candidates gearing up for primary day in Massachusetts tomorrow. Voters will decide between incumbent Governor Charlie Baker and attorney Scott Lively in the GOP primary. Jay Gonzalez and Bob Massey will battle for the Democratic nomination. And a trio of Republicans competing for a chance to unseat liberal Senator Elizabeth Warren. And former President Obama is hitting the campaign trail in Illinois this week, but some Democrats don't want his help. Senators like Montana's John Tester and North Dakota's Heidi Heitkamp tell The Hill he might do more harm than good. They fear his participation could inadvertently fire up the base, President Trump's base. Rachel?
Thank you. Growing outrage over the upcoming new film First Man, starring Ryan Gosling, for omitting the historic moment of astronaut Neil Armstrong planting the American flag on the moon in 1969.
Now, fellow astronaut Buzz Aldrin is weighing in on Twitter, sharing a photo of him next to the flag with the hashtag proud to be an American.
So why wouldn't Hollywood tell this part of the patriotic story? Here to weigh in, former White House and Pentagon official Douglas McKinnon, who sat down with Neil Armstrong in the late 80s. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Good morning. So why do you think Hollywood omitted the flag? I mean, it's such an iconic moment, him planting the flag, Neil Armstrong doing that.
Well, I think this has been going on for the last 5 decades or more. I mean, Ryan Gosling is a very good actor. From what I've seen and heard, he does a great job actually portraying Neil Armstrong in the movie. But the problem is he's a liberal, and Hollywood is dominated now, unfortunately, by liberals. And because of that power, they always have the temptation to revise history or to, in fact, bend history to reflect their current political views. And they really have to resist that because ultimately it's unethical to do that.
Well, that's right. You used the right word, revise. Revisionist history is rampant. And so they want to believe we're all global citizens, humans first. And ultimately, it was an American Congress, American astronauts, American ingenuity. It was an American president, JFK, who set this mission. And ultimately, it was Buzz Aldrin who saluted that flag and called it his proudest moment on the moon. Why not just acknowledge that and then say, yeah, it was also a giant step for mankind?
Well, it absolutely was, and it's one of these things, as you said, I had the high honor to sit down with Neil Armstrong in the White House, and he and I spoke about this, and he was incredibly proud to plant the American flag on the surface of the moon. And we have to remember, too, that it was the blood, sweat, and tears of Americans that got us there. And this is not a Republican story, it's not a Democrat story, but it is, in fact, an American story, and Hollywood has to understand that, and they have to understand that there is pride in America, and it's something that Americans ultimately do care about.
Well, and Doug, Armstrong's sons, Rick and Mark, as well as author James Hansen, put out this statement that says, this story is human and it is universal. Of course, it celebrates an America achievement. It also celebrates an achievement for all. They're weighing in on this. My question to you is, have we forgotten the race in space?
Well, we have, and in fact, it's going on again, too. That's one of the things. It was President Kennedy, in fact, you know, a hero to many liberals and maybe to Mr. Gosling, who, in fact, launched us, you know, to the moon. And also, right now, with what's going on, there's no nation that's more dependent upon its satellites in orbit for its national and economic security than the United States of America. And there's two countries in the world that understand that, and that's the People's Republic of China and Russia.
Yes.
And while a lot of people don't want to give President Trump credit for anything, he's in fact the first commander-in-chief since President Kennedy who understands that, unfortunately, you know, some countries will take their military ambitions into space with them, and it's incumbent upon the United States of America to protect itself. And so I do think ultimately, too, we're going to go back to the moon, and next year will be the 50th anniversary of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, and I don't think there'll be anybody more proud than Mr. Armstrong's family that we're going to get back there.
Well, that's why the Space Force idea resonates with so many people. Truly, it is more than, it's like SDI and Ronald Reagan. It's more than an idea. It's an ethos that we need to dominate that next theater if we're to keep America secure. Douglas McKinnon, thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Good stuff. All right, well, the socialist from the Bronx, she's got a new resistance tactic. Get the kids involved.
I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress out here, so I'm going to go to D.C. We're going to be fighting Trump.
She's going to D.C. to fight Trump. So what does Dan Bongino think about that? Well, stick around.
And he tried to steal a cart full of groceries, but his supermarket sweep was stopped with one quick punch.
Otherwise,
it's Labor Day. Everyone's home. They're relaxing. They're getting ready to barbecue.
It's true. They are. I bet this man will be barbecuing later on today. Dan Bongino, former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, and host of the Dan Bongino Show. Dan, I'm waiting for my invite to your barbecue at some point. It would be a crowning achievement of my life. So,
brother, let me tell you something. You don't want to come down here right now. Florida, we got a tropical storm. It is like a monsoon down here.
Okay.
So you're safe right where you are.
But I heard your wife makes good empanadas, so maybe it might be worth it.
The best, the absolute best. My wife's empanadas are killer. You know me well.
My self-invite is in the mail. But there's another storm in Florida. You've got gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis. He's running against an avowed socialist in that campaign. He talked about what would happen if his opponent, Democratic Socialist Andrew Gillum, is elected. Listen to Ron DeSantis.
He is on the far left socialist fringe. He's a Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez type of candidate. He wants to raise taxes in Florida 40%. He wants a single-payer healthcare system in Florida, which would bankrupt the state. He wants to abolish ICE and doesn't believe in doing any type of immigration enforcement. He wants to turn Florida into Venezuela.
Is that what would happen?
Yeah, you know, Ron DeSantis is absolutely right. And I'm down here in Florida every day. This is where my business is run. It's not just that Gillum's a bad fit for Florida. He's just a bad fit in general. His policies are outrageously poorly thought out. I mean, one of the things he said, Gillum, which I found hard to believe, Pete, which was economic illiteracy at its worst, is he said on another network, he said, well, we want to raise the taxes on corporations, not...
Yeah. Dan, let us play that for you, because that's what we want to get to, which is how Gillum tries to explain why your taxes need to be raised. Hold on, let's play that and get your reaction.
Sure.
Are you ready to tell the people of Florida that they need to pay a lot more in taxes to fund your health care plan?
We could actually save the system trillions over an extended period of time.
You could, but in the short term, in order to do that, you need to raise taxes. Fair?
We would need to do it as part of a federation of other states coming together.
In order to do that, taxes would have to be raised. Is that fair? Do you agree with that?
I don't buy that.
I still don't understand how you would do it without raising taxes.
What I said, and I ran on this, by the way, is that we will increase taxes for corporations in our state.
Dan?
Guys, I mean, I'm serious. It's like, with all due respect, he won a hard primary, and I ran for office. It's tough. I get that. But you have to actually know stuff now. Suggesting that raising taxes on corporations will not raise taxes on businesses, when I actually own a corporation in Florida, it's economic idiocy. Who do you think? Serious question for the listening audience out there. If you're a liberal watching this, you're always welcome, of course, but who do you think corporations are composed of, right? Space aliens? Animals? Martians? It's people. I have a corporation in Florida. You know who pays the taxes? Me. What has two thumbs and pays taxes in Florida? This guy. I pay them. I mean, it is absolutely insane to suggest that hiking the business tax in Florida while everybody comes down to Florida to escape high taxes is somehow going to rescue Florida from this is outrageous, and that people aren't going to pay it is just nonsense.
Dan, so there's another socialist who was endorsed by Bernie Sanders out there. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I want you to see this footage of her trying to rally kids, which is a new constituency for her. Take a look. Tell me what you think.
I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress out here, so I'm going to go to D.C. We're going to be fighting Trump. Yeah!
That's crazy.
But we need your
that the kids get so excited about
help to fight Trump. Are you going to tell your parents to vote? Yeah. Okay, good. Because I don't like Trump.
So aside from looking terribly immature in that video, if you ask me, for someone running for Congress, I mean, what is she trying to do with these kids?
Yeah, I mean, this is the socialist thing, right? Get them while they're young.
Yeah.
I mean, socialism really is. It's socialism's for idiots. I'm sorry. I mean, if you've ever cracked a book and looked at the history of socialism, socialism is death, despair, destruction. That's all it is. There's no such thing, by the way, as democratic socialism. There's nothing democratic about socialism. Socialism is the government control of the means of production. And really, this is, I talk about inappropriate. Again, you know, I ran for office, and there are times people bring their kids over and you take pictures and things like that. But to get into this kind of propaganda thing with a bunch of kids, grossly inappropriate. Even when I talk at my daughter's school, politics is strictly off limits.
Yeah, you're exactly
right.
And
Dan, trust your daughter did not go to Burning Man. We want to hit you with that. It's like Woodstock without the music. Their latest thing is they want to protest ICE. What do you think of that?
Yeah, you know, I never really got Burning Man. Like, great to everybody who goes out there sure having a good time. Yeah, oh my gosh, you ain't kidding. Like Burning Man, I barely want to go to the Jupiter movie theater down the road. Like, that's too inconvenient for me, you know. But this is the Democrats. This is the way they're doing it now, and I got to tell you, it's very smart. And Republicans and conservatives got to be on the lookout. This protest at Burning Man of this software company, this is how they're creating economic pressure for things they can't get done legislatively. They were protesting a software company that had a contract with ICE. They know Americans support ICE, so what do? They create public pressure through their culture war and a protest. This is very dangerous stuff, and conservatives got to be on the lookout for this.
But Dan, really quick though, isn't it interesting they won't work with ICE, but they're willing to work with the Chinese government?
Yeah, I mean, look at the same thing we're seeing with software companies and social media companies now. They'll protest conservatives, but, you know, they'll work with the Chinese to suppress an entire population of people. I mean, talk about the height of hypocrisy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really
That's a great
is.
point.
Dan, the news of the day is that you're a guy with two thumbs who pays taxes. That much we know.
This guy.
We have a lot of comments.
Right there. Dan, thanks a lot.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day, Dan.
Always quotable. As is Jillian, always quotable.
Good morning.
Good morning,
We're following
Jillian.
a number of breaking news stories, so let's get you caught up, starting with this Fox News alert now. A man is shot by police after firing into a crowd at a California racetrack. So announcers were actually calling the race, panicking after hearing gunshots. Listen to this.
Well, I'm talking about a storm that could be packing a punch of its own. That's going to be the big story here as we head into Labor Day weekend and continue to move through Labor Day weekend. South Florida now eyeing a storm that could become Tropical Storm Gordon. Let's take a look at these maps and see where this system is. It's still coming together, still really producing at this point, but there it is, spinning just off the coast, bringing very heavy rain. Not a tropical storm yet, likely will become one through the overnight hours. We're beginning to see warnings pop up there across portions of South Florida. The movement of this, guys, if it does become a tropical storm, moving into the Gulf here by Tuesday or so. So this is going to be one we're watching here throughout today, running into tomorrow and Wednesday also. Griff, as I throw this back to you, can I get back just a little bit?
Look at that.
I also don't wear a belt. Don't let them give you a hard time.
Wow.
This is cool now.
There we go.
Adam,
Is that a fashion statement for guys not to wear belts?
Adam does
Yes.
it for fashion
Yes.
purposes, totally legitimate. Griff does it for food purposes. Different reasons.
Different reasons.
like it.
All
Thanks,
right.
Adam.
Thank you, Adam. Well, is a burn pit exposure the Agent Orange of our times? Thousands of vets are facing very serious health issues. Our Leah Gabriel sat down with retired Army General David Petraeus. Take a look.
Many of their claims have been denied by the VA. A lot of them said the same thing. So what should be done to address these veterans' concerns now?
Welcome back to Fox and Friends, and happy Labor Day to everybody out there. We have with us Leah Gabriel, our Fox News correspondent, former Navy pilot.
Yeah, growing outrage as tens of thousands of veterans who say they've been disabled by toxic fumes spewing from burn pits on their bases claim the VA is rejecting their claims for care altogether.
Here with more, former Navy fighter pilot Leah Gabriel, a Fox News correspondent who sat down for an exclusive interview with retired Army General David Petraeus on what vets are calling the new Agent Orange.
You know, General Petraeus dedicated years of his life to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He led the 101st Airborne, pushing into Baghdad in 2003, and he returned to lead the surge as Commander Multinational Force Iraq, and eventually took over U.S. Central Command. In my sit-down with him, he recalls what troops were dealing with while deployed during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and what it was like seeing these burn pits firsthand among the many, many challenges he was facing at the time. Take a listen.
In 2007, General David Petraeus took command of the coalition forces in Iraq. To defeat the enemy, he launched a robust counterinsurgency campaign. But there was another threat: exposure to burn pits.
At that time, we weren't worried about burn pits. We were worried about just getting enough water for our troops in the really hot summer. We were looking forward to the time where we might get some real food.
The general also recalls how burn pits were used on military bases to crudely incinerate everything from trash to medical waste, and early in the war, even human waste.
As you and I both know, burn pits were used to dispose of things like chemical solvents, human waste, medical waste, all kinds of things were basically thrown into these. It sounds like you were very aware of this while you were in command, and it was just something that had to be done.
Well, it was something that had to be done for a long period of time, but at a certain point, it set in that perhaps there's a better way of doing it. And so again, a number of us surfaced these issues. And incinerators were actually brought in some cases. And then there were even problems just getting incinerators to work.
I know that you're aware of the huge number of veterans who believe that after being exposed to burn pits, they became sick. Many of their claims have been denied by the VA. A lot of them said the same thing, that they don't regret the service they did for our country, but now they feel like they're being abandoned by the government. So what should be done to address these veterans' concerns now?
Well, we should meet our obligation to our veterans in this and many other cases as well. It's an issue of trying to determine with some degree of scientific rigor, was there an effect because of the exposure to the smoke from the burn pits? If so, again, what are the symptoms of that? What can we do now to mitigate the risk of what could transpire from this?
General Petraeus has thrown his support behind the campaign to improve assistance for our veterans. In July, he sent a letter to Congress urging them to back the Burn Pits Accountability Act. That's a recently introduced bipartisan bill. He writes, "I know that you share the sense of obligation that virtually all Americans have to those who have stepped forward at a time of war." And Pete, Rachel, and Griff, you know, when service members raise their right hand, there's an expectation that if they get hurt, if they get injured, they're going to be taking care of our country in return, and that's what they're asking for now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big challenge. I've been near burn pits. I'm sure you have as well. You've got the difference between the guys and gals that worked on them and near them every day exposed to toxic fumes, and then what if you were on that base or even in the same town, you had a different form of exposure?
Well,
That's the challenge.
we heard from someone who's currently serving in Iraq, and burn pits are still happening, sometimes on other sides of bases where they're still being exposed. But we're hearing from our viewers, and hopefully they'll continue to give us information on this issue.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks for bringing that very important story.
Thank you for your service.
All right.
Always an important
Big
part.
tech in the hot seat this week on Capitol Hill. What questions should lawmakers ask? Welcome back to Fox and Friends, and happy Labor Day to everybody out there. We have with us Leah Gabriel, our Fox News correspondent, former Navy pilot.
Yeah, growing outrage as tens of thousands of veterans who say they've been disabled by toxic fumes spewing from burn pits on their bases claim the VA is rejecting their claims for care altogether.
Here with more, former Navy fighter pilot Leah Gabriel, a Fox News correspondent who sat down for an exclusive interview with retired Army General David Petraeus on what vets are calling the new Agent Orange.
You know, General Petraeus dedicated years of his life to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He led the 101st Airborne, pushing into Baghdad in 2003, and he returned to lead the surge as Commander Multinational Force Iraq, and eventually took over U.S. Central Command. In my sit-down with him, he recalls what troops were dealing with while deployed during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and what it was like seeing these burn pits firsthand among the many, many challenges he was facing at the time. Take a listen.
In 2007, General David Petraeus took command of the coalition forces in Iraq. To defeat the enemy, he launched a robust counterinsurgency campaign. But there was another threat: exposure to burn pits.
At that time, we weren't worried about burn pits. We were worried about just getting enough water for our troops in the really hot summer. We were looking forward to the time where we might get some real food.
The general also recalls how burn pits were used on military bases to crudely incinerate everything from trash to medical waste, and early in the war, even human waste.
As you and I both know, burn pits were used to dispose of things like chemical solvents, human waste, medical waste, all kinds of things were basically thrown into these. It sounds like you were very aware of this while you were in command, and it was just something that had to be done.
Well, it was something that had to be done for a long period of time, but at a certain point, it set in that perhaps there's a better way of doing it. And so again, a number of us surfaced these issues. And incinerators were actually brought in some cases. And then there were even problems just getting incinerators to work.
I know that